Ahead of Fast X, there are a few Fast and Furious movies worth rewatching or watching for the first time. The beginning of the end of the Fast and Furious franchise starts with the release of the 10th installment in the main Fast Saga. Fast and Furious 10 being the beginning of the franchise's end gives it plenty of major connections to past installments. Dom and his main crew are all returning for the new film, and the same is true for several past franchise villains, like Jacob Toretto, John Cena, and Cipher, Charlize Theron. Any Fast and Furious movie rewatch before Fast X needs to include the film that started it all, 2001's The Fast and the Furious. The movie is where characters like Dom, Letty Ortiz, and Mia Toretto all made their first appearances, with each of them slated to return in Fast and Furious 10. This is the film that helped establish early trends for the franchise, such as its familial themes, car races, and more. While the Fast and Furious movies have come a long way from stealing DVD players and street racing, remembering how the story started with Dom and Brian O'Connor, Paul Walker, is important. Another reason why The Fast and the Furious is the best place to start a Fast and Furious 10 rewatch is because of the early days of Dom and Letty's relationship. They have become the core of the franchise in many ways as new entries have been released, with Vin Diesel even claiming Dom and Letty are the biggest love story that we've seen in cinema. This is ultimately where the relationship begins. Dom and Letty's romance might not be as central to the Fast and the Furious as it becomes in later entries, but the likelihood of Fast X continuing to test their relationship means knowing how it started should be key. The next entry in a Fast and Furious 10 rewatch order should be Fast 5. This is not to say that Too Fast Too Furious, The Fast and the Furious, Tokyo Drift, and Fast and Furious have no importance to play with Fast X, but they are minimal at best. Fast 5 is a turning point for the franchise as it brings the main cast of characters together for the first time before Dom, Brian, Letty, Roman, Tyrese Gibson, and Tej, Ludacris, became the core 5 characters. It also introduced Hobbs as an antagonist for the team and raised the ante when it came to Fast and Furious action scenes. The reason why Fast 5 is essential for a Fast X rewatch is thanks to how the latter is heavily building off the 2011 movie. This includes featuring flashbacks to Fast 5's events and making Jason Momoa's Dante related to the film's main villain, Hernan Reyes. Reyes' death becomes Dante's motivation in Fast X, with the movie also bringing the characters back to Brazil for the first time since the safe heist. The way that Fast 5 impacts the story of the new movie makes it an essential entry to include in a Fast and Furious 10 rewatch. Fast and Furious 6 is also worth including in a Fast X movie rewatch. The movie includes a few pivotal developments that are still impacting the franchise years later. This includes Fast and Furious 6 being the movie where Letty's death was reversed. It is also the first time that Dom's crew are hired by a government agency to save the world, something that becomes common practice for them in subsequent entries. This is used as a way for the Fast and Furious franchise to turn the outlaws and criminals back into law-abiding citizens, for the most part, as they receive pardons for their past in exchange for helping. Owen Shaw is also responsible for helping usher in a new age for Fast and Furious villains. He marked the first time the franchise began exploring Dom's team going up against other drivers or enemies that were aided by advanced technology. This becomes a common thread for the Fast and Furious movies moving forward and could once again be connected to Dante's ultimate mission in Fast X. Furthermore, Fast and Furious 6 is where Giselle, Gal Gadot, dies, which has a huge impact on Han, Sung Kang, allowing the movie to directly set up the next entry in a Fast and Furious 10 rewatch guide. Furious 7 is a very important entry to the franchise ahead of Fast X. The movie is responsible for fully introducing Deckard Shaw as the vengeful older brother of Owen. While he will officially be part of Dom's team in Fast X, that will come after a reunion with Han, who he appeared to kill at the start of his revenge plan. Furious 7 is a great reminder of how much of a threat Deckard was to the team before his redemption story started. Assuming Fast and Furious 10 continues exploring the #JusticeForHan campaign, it will be good for audiences to have a grasp on Han and Deckard's history. The way that Furious 7 ends Brian O'Connor's story is also something that could be worth knowing in Fast X. After Paul Walker's death, Furious 7 gave Brian a great send-off that leads to him retiring from saving the world with Dom to instead focus on being there for his family. F9 is the most recent entry in the Fast and Furious franchise and thus an unskippable entry in a Fast X rewatch guide. One of the keys for why F9 needs to be seen ahead of Fast and Furious 10 is the bigger focus on Dom being a father. Building on the revelation from the Fate of the Furious that Elena gave birth to Dom's son in secret and her death at Cipher's hand, F9 explores Dom adjusting to being a father and revisiting how his dad died. It is clear that his son Brian Toretto will play an important role in Fast X, including being kidnapped by Dante, so seeing Dom as a father is important. Other important elements from F9 include confirmation that Han was still alive, the introduction of Dom's brother Jacob, and Cipher's continued obsession with taking down Dom and his team. More about how Han faked his death should come in Fast X, while Jacob has fully turned the page from villain to hero by the time the new movie takes place. Cipher's role in the franchise began as a villain in the Fate of the Furious, but considering she might be teaming up with Dom this time, F9 gives viewers the basics of her story in this Fast X rewatch guide.